We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words, spoken by Thomas Jefferson, are symbolic of the Jeffersonian legacy and its influence on America and the world. His impact on the founding and developmental principles of the United States cannot be denied and are seen in the ideals that Americans and followers of Jeffersonian thought hold most dear. Contrary to the almost deistic quality that many impart to Jefferson, he was far from the purity and logic of his speeches and writings. His faults and hypocrisy do not undo the good he accomplished. However, to view him in the light of a man equal to the values he's espoused is not an accurate uh, interpretation of his legacy. Much of Jefferson's legacy is positive. He helped shape the world. His penning of the Declaration of Independence eloquently and articulated American revolutionary sentiment, which is known and sacred to many. In 1777, he drafted a bill establishing religious freedom, which stated no man shall be compelled to frequent, support any religious worship. All men shall be free to profess and by argument maintain their opinion in religion, and the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capabilities. This bill was radical and ahead of its time, and though it would not be adopted until 1786, it would become the foundation for the First Amendment of the Constitution, which is one of America's greatest founding principles. Religious freedom is thought to have been ingrained in American society since its founding. However, that was not the case. When Jefferson proposed this bill initially, several founding fathers, including George Washington, were against it because they sought to levy public taxes for the purpose of supporting Christian education. As president, Jefferson offered several accomplishments with very lasting legacies. The greatest was the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the nation's size and natural resources for a mere $15 million. The second was the creation of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, which was responsible for training and grooming many fine military leaders as well as world leaders, and does so to this day. Jefferson would also champion the abolition of the international slave trade of the United States. The law that went into effect in 1808 would ban the importation of slaves in the United States. The act, though morally right, did nothing regarding the slave trade within the United States. And this brings up the darker side of Jefferson's legacy. Jefferson had been a vocal opponent of slavery, and many times written of the evil of the institution. Based on his writings, Jefferson appeared to mean all races, including African, in the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson claimed to be very against the institution, but was one of the most prolific slave owners and traders in the state of Virginia. He switched his crops from tobacco, which was heavily relied on slaves, to wheat, which did not. Rather than free his surplus slaves, he sold some and used the remaining slaves for other purposes like building on his property and house servants. When he died, he provided that only 4 of his many slaves were to be freed. His remaining 130, which included the family, wives, and children of the 4 he freed, were sold off to pay for his exorbitant debts. He deemed that 4 slaves were worthy of freedom. However, they were not worthy of their spouses and families joining them. It is said that what a man does at the end of his life is a greater measure of what's in his heart than what he did prior. Jefferson spoke many times of the wrongness of slavery. In 1785, he wrote, "The whole commerce between master and slave is a perpetual experience of the most boisterous passions, the most unremitting despotism on one part, and the degrading submission on another." Jefferson lived 41 years after that statement, many times speaking of the horrors of slavery. Not even in his death did he do right by those he so many times said were unfairly enslaved. I liken his words on slavery to someone preaching morality from the pulpit while maintaining an extramarital affair. The words they're speaking are true, but the speaker is not true. Jefferson's belief on slavery were accurate, but his actions in life did not support his belief. Herein lies the darkness and hypocrisy of Jefferson's legacy. Jefferson was an enlightened thinker who articulated some of America's greatest principles, which include self-government, life, liberty, in the pursuit of happiness. He championed those principles while denying those same rights to hundreds of people he enslaved. I hold that the values of Jefferson and his legacy are in his words, not in his life. He did not personify all the values he claimed. Therefore, it's wrong to hold him as a champion of American values. His words, however, are no less true. History is filled with men and women who have accomplished great things, and many of them have also perpetrated evils. This should not undo their accomplishments, just as their accomplishments should not negate their wrongdoings. One must look at Jefferson in the total context of and uh, his life and time. See him for his qualities and faults, and only doing that can one recognize and understand his true legacy. Thank you.